Welcome into Hockey Sense, everybody. Great to have you with us. It's trade deadline day 2025. So many things to get into, and we'll do it as quickly as possible because I want to get the show out there so people can tune in and watch. Typically, the show is released right around now, but I did want to wait until after the trade deadline was complete. I wanted to hear from Doug Armstrong, hear what he had to say here locally from a Blues angle, and then get the show rolling here. So Jamal Mayers will join us. No other guest here on the show today. Listen, everyone's schedules are pretty crazy. A lot of people working in television, different media, a lot of individuals working with their various teams that they work for around the NHL, general managers, coaches, players, etc. So listen, tough day to kind of reach out to somebody when I didn't even know exactly what time to bring them on board, what time we do the interview, because I wanted to wait for everything to kind of slow down and calm down. And then we'd move on with the show here on this edition of Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community, baby. Jamal Mayers will join us, though, in a couple minutes, and we're going to recap a number of different things. Listen, Little Blues, best program, bar none. You want to get your son or daughter into hockey, man, you sign them up for Little Blues just for a few dollars. It's not very expensive at all. You get, I think, 6 ice times, great instruction, all your equipment. I'm talking head to toe, skates, sticks, helmets. So if you're like, yeah, little Johnny or Susie, they want to play hockey, but I go to the hockey shop, I don't even know what to get them. I don't know where to start. You don't have to worry about it with Little Blues, brought to you by First Community. First Community, so much stuff going on. First-time home buyers, wedding loans, ask about that. They've got the holiday loan as well if you want to save up money. So then you have a nice little nest egg in time for your holiday shopping. So you're not in all this debt. We talk about that all the time. How about the small business lending? If you run a business, I'm talking to you right now. You should give me a call, too, if you want to come on board here on Hockey Sense or the Chemistry Podcast. Reach out to me. We'd love to promote you. But if you're ready to take your business to the next level, First Community, they offer competitive rates on commercial loans, lines of credit, commercial credit cards designed to help your business thrive. That's what they do. They are looking out for your best interests. Dedicated team help you get the funding you need so you can seize new opportunities. So if you didn't know, First Community did commercial loans, that's okay because now you know. Check them out. Ask them about it. firstcommunity.com. Four Hands Brewing Company, taking St. Louis to the next level, one craft beer at a time. Four Hands, man, they've got all the new locations, including Lambert Airport, date night in Kirkwood, family night in Chesterfield, boys night downtown at the 1220 South 8th Street location. Doesn't have to be a boys night. You can bring your wife, you can bring your girlfriend. It could be girls night, it could be anything. They've got parking there if you're going to go to a Cardinal game or anything like that coming up this summer. Awesome location downtown, but they've got all these other great locations too. Plus, they've got the best seltzers in North America, including the Mango Lemonade Cam and Strick Podcast Hard Seltzer from Four Hands Brewing Company. Check that out. Four Hands Brewing Company, proud sponsor of what we do here on Hockey Sense. Of course, Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Check that out. And download the app today. They've got all the great deals. The deals are so good they call them steals. That's how good they are. So download the app and do all your shopping. Some of the locations have drive-through locations. A lot of them have curbside pickup, so you don't even have to get out of your car. How nice is that? I mean, you can buy everything you need from Dirt Cheap. Don't even have to get out of your car. They've got the best selection of beer, wine, and booze. Don't sleep on the party supplies. If you've got parties going on that you're preparing, if you're hosting one, they got everything you need, paper goods, etc., decorations, everything else you need. Over there at Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. All right. First off, the Blues. Listen, I know they had conversations with a lot of different teams. Braden Schen's name was out there, but they were never going to give away Braden Schenn. And it's not a direct comparison by any means. Brock Nelson, widely considered a far superior offensive player, certainly a better goal scorer, but Braden Schenn is no slouch either when it comes to producing offense, and he brings grit, and he's your captain, brings physicality. Different types of players, but when you look at what Brock Nelson fetched from the New York Islanders, including a couple of first-round picks, I mean, listen, Doug Armstrong was going to ask for a lot, as he should. But, for people out there who get a little bit frustrated and say, well, why didn't they move on from Justin Falk or Nick Leddy or Braden Shen or some of these, veteran guys? They held on to a couple of UFAs like Radek Faksa, for example, Ryan Suter. I think Doug Armstrong made it clear to a lot of people, like, listen, these guys are not fetching 2 or 3 first-round picks in return, for these pending unrestricted free agents. Who knows? Maybe they try to sign 1 or 2 of those guys, or they're both one and done. Who knows? We'll see how the season plays out. 19 games to go, by the way, for the Blues, and just 2 points out. So a lot of things can happen over the course of the next several weeks with almost 20 games to go in the season. But at the very least, Doug Armstrong, I think he just laid the groundwork. He has an understanding. Other teams have an understanding of what he wants in return for these players, and he knows which teams are capable of maybe pulling this off this summer, who have the assets that he would want in return. I mean, if you move on from a guy like Braden Shen, you got to have somebody who can replace him. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And if you don't have players that you can plug in when you're 2 points out, I've said all along, this is a different situation than where the Blues have found themselves in recent years. Where they've been a handful of points out and they moved on from some bigger name, unrestricted free agents that have fetched first-round picks in return. If the Blues had those types of players, maybe they do move on from those guys, even being just 2 points out. But it didn't make sense to move on from a couple of these guys that weren't going to bring a whole lot in return. And now with Parayko going down, it's terrible news, by the way. Colton Parayko, you saw how that injury happened at the end of the game in overtime. I mean, just got his knee buckled underneath him. He toe-picked earlier in the game as well, and maybe that contributed to it. But, people with the Blues, and including Doug Armstrong, are telling me that it happened in that final play in overtime. So it's clear as day. You could see it. And he was laboring trying to get back up. And they didn't need Colton Parayko the rest of the game. The overtime ended, and he typically doesn't shoot in the shootout anyway. So that's too bad for Colton Parayko. But once you lose him for 6 weeks, obviously Ryan Suter, you just can't afford to move on from him. I mean, who's going to replace him? You don't have guys like that. Matthew Kessel gets called up. He'll be here for the rest of the season. Doug Armstrong did mention today that Zachary Bolduc, paper transaction, he'll be eligible to play in the playoffs down in Springfield in the American League should the Blues not make the playoffs. And if they're not playing when Springfield is playing, they'll send him down and let him play some meaningful games down there. So that's where things are at. Now the Blues, I think, have a better idea. If they want to move Shen in the summer, they know which general managers are serious about acquiring him. Tough player to move. I mean, much more difficult than Brock Nelson. Nelson, 33, yeah, and so is Shen. But with Shen having 3 years left on his contract at $6.5 per season, that's difficult for a lot of teams to swallow. If he's a rental player, you could have gotten a nice return and certainly would probably have moved Braden Shen, especially if you weren't looking to re-sign him. So that's where we're at in terms of the Blues right now. I want to go over a couple of trades, though. By the way, Brad Marchand, we don't know exactly yet as to what's going back to Boston, but now he's a member of the Florida Panthers. How about that? No Matthew Tkachuk for the foreseeable future. Who knows if he's even going to be available when the season resumes or before the playoffs begin. So, again, some added protection there. The rich get richer, as they say. Brad Marchand, now a member of the Florida Panthers. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. That's the National Hockey League for you, though. Scott Lawton, a couple bigger names. He goes to Toronto. You knew Toronto was looking for some depth up the middle at the center position. They move Nikita Grebekin. He's a right winger, conditional first-round pick. They retain as well 50% of Lawton's contract, the Philadelphia Flyers do. Thought it was interesting that Pittsburgh flips Luke Shen. I think a lot of people expected that. Pittsburgh out of the playoffs. They got Luke Shen, the brother of Braden Shen from Nashville a few days ago, and so they flip him. They send him over to Winnipeg. That'll help them. Winnipeg, a physical team as it is, they get even stronger. Pittsburgh gets a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick, second-rounder from 2026, the fourth-rounder in 2027. So that's what the Pittsburgh Penguins get in return for Luke Shen, who wasn't a member of the Penguins very long. Now, listen, the Mikko Rantanen situation, this is interesting. And I was told by people close to him as recent as yesterday, they turned down that contract extension from the Carolina Hurricanes. It was obvious that Rantanen, from the day that he went there, it really had no interest in signing there long term. It didn't appear to be a great fit for his family, for him, their style of play. We'll get into that here in just a couple of minutes. But, Rantanen kind of gets what he wanted. There was only a handful of teams that he would have signed an extension with now at this time. And Dallas was certainly one of those. LA was not one, so they crossed off the LA Kings off of that list. I think maybe there was some interest in Toronto. Dallas being a state-free or a tax-free state certainly helps. Toronto, there's different clauses and different laws that you can get around from the heavy taxes up there, for NHL players who play in Canada. I don't know if it's the RCA clause. I forget what it is, something like that. I don't have it written down in front of me, but there is a clause that you can get around that a lot of agents, the shrewd agents, are good at doing. So Logan Stankoven goes from Dallas to Carolina. They get a couple of first-round picks. And you look at, listen, in the case of Carolina, they can flip these 2 first-round picks. They can flip them at the draft. They can flip them before the draft. I don't see exactly the year for the first-round picks. So if they're first-round picks beyond 2025, say it's a first-rounder in 26 and 27, I should know that, but it doesn't say here on my trade tracker that I'm using to go down the line here with these trades. Regardless, they get 2 first-round picks and Logan Stankoven. Listen, I said on Twitter yesterday, if I was a general manager, I don't know if I would have given up Stankoven for Rantanen. Like, if I knew that he wanted to sign with my team, and in this case being the Dallas Stars, then I just would have said, well, I'm going to hang on to Stankoven, and I'll sign him in this summer for 1 less year, 7 years versus the 8 years that he was able to get in a sign-in trade. And then I could flip Stankoven to another team. Maybe I bring a defenseman on board. Maybe there's another forward that I want. Maybe I hang on to him and add him to the group along with Rantanen. I mean, with some of these players, Rantanen obviously has struggled a little bit in Carolina from a production standpoint. They play differently. Carolina is one of the few teams in the league that play a full man-on-man everywhere on the ice, including the defensive end. Offensive end, it seems like everywhere. They're just playing man-on-man. But in the defensive zone, obviously, is what I'm talking about. They're playing man-on-man, which can be very taxing for players who want to play with time and space and be creative, use their hockey sense. I just feel like you're in a constant battle when you're playing man-on-man. You're always close to an opposing player. You're always battling with an opposing player. You feel like you're inside their jersey the entire game. And it can be a little bit of a struggle, playing that style. For a lot of creative offensive players, they don't typically thrive in that situation. When you look at Jake Gensel, who went to Carolina last season, look at how he's playing right now in Tampa Bay. Different environment, more skilled environment, certainly more conducive to the way that he plays. And I think the same case will be for Rantanen. I think he'll get back to being the player that we were accustomed to seeing in Colorado all those years. That I think he'll get back to playing at that level in Dallas, free him up a little bit. Don't play man-to-man. Carolina, and I think it can be taxing to play that style too. And for whatever reason, they just max out in the regular season. They just haven't gotten it done in the postseason. Now, I shouldn't say that because they've gotten to the conference final and whatnot, but they've been swept in the conference final. You're waiting for that team to get to the final. But you know what? They took a run at them. They didn't have Rantanen locked up when they made the trade. They had to get something in return. They just moved on from Marty Necas, a really good player. Jack Drury, good player. And has a chance to become good, even better, I should say. You had to recover something, so at least you get Stankoven. If you remember, I was pumping up Stankoven coming into the season about him being a Calder Trophy candidate. I don't know if he's had that type of season. His numbers are a little lower than I thought that they would be coming into the year. He's got 9 goals on the season, 20-something points. I thought he'd be better than that. Just watching him last year in the playoffs and then watching him a couple of times in the preseason this year, I thought this guy was poised to have just a breakout offensive season because he works so hard. But I think he'll be a pretty good fit in Carolina with his work ethic and how he gets around the ice and how he approaches his game. He should be a decent fit there. Rantanen was just never a fit. But the way Carolina plays, it's just not conducive for a lot of star players. I don't think you're going to have a lot of superstar players lining up to sign there. But the window is open for them to win now. I think every general manager is in a different spot. Kevin Adams in Buffalo in a different spot than probably Eric Tulsky, although the pressure was on Tulsky in Carolina after what could have potentially been a debacle for the second year in a row where you give up good assets for rental players and you don't get them extended. So he's safe face. But, Kevin Adams is in a different situation than Bill Zito, for example. But Zito still makes some big moves. Some GMs, Doug Armstrong, he's in a secure position with his position as general manager of the Blues. He doesn't feel like he has to go out there and make some big-time splash to save his job. The Ottawa situation, though, with Brady Tkachuk, I mean, this feels like the beginning of the end for Brady Tkachuk, the captain of the Ottawa Senators. How quickly we get to that end remains to be seen. His no move kicks in on July 1st. Then he's going to be able to decide where he goes. LA is a team that I would pay attention to with Brady Tkachuk. DJ Smith, an assistant coach with the Kings, loved Brady when he was the head coach of the Ottawa Senators. If they were to try to get him out of Ottawa before his no move kicks in, because I don't think Brady would choose to go to LA. It's my guess, my words. But when you see Brady Tkachuk react the way that he did to losing one of his best friends, I mean, I just wonder what kind of impact that's going to have on the dressing room. I mean, look how emotional the captain of the team is about losing one of his best friends. Josh Norris is a good player. So I feel like this is a better trade for Buffalo than it is for Ottawa. And I like Dylan Cousins, you know. I think he's a bottom six guy. I think he's way overpaid as a bottom six guy. He put up big numbers a few years back, but hasn't shown that he's capable of getting back to that level. And I do think the Ottawa players are going to like Dylan Cousins. By all accounts, I talked to some people today. His teammates always have liked him, and he's always been a popular guy. So I think they'll come around and they'll like Dylan Cousins. But an awkward situation to walk into. When the captain of your team is blindsided by a trade, they move his best friend. Not saying they have to run it by him, but again, if you're trying to think long-term here, you want to keep Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa. I've said it over and over. This is not a great start to doing that when you move his best friend. Man, he was emotional seeing that. It's like Casey Middlestat when he was traded from Buffalo. I heard Rasmus Dahlin wasn't very happy about that. Like, that was his best friend, but he ended up extending and staying there. So we'll see what happens with Brady and Ottawa. I would never just completely rule it out. I think he likes Ottawa. I don't think he's looking to get out of there right now. Don't read into what I'm saying. But tough scene at Brady Tkachuk's locker today. The emotion, you could feel it, you could see it. And so when a team trades away a popular player, man, and the best friend of the captain that you want to see in a Senators uniform for several years to come, just felt like the beginning of the end, man. That's all I'm saying about the Ottawa Senators. I'll have more to talk about with that on the Cam and Strick podcast. Again, Hockey Sense brought to you by First Community. Let's step aside. Let's bring in Jamal Mayers. We'll get into a number of trades and hear what he has to say on a lot of these deals. Man, Brock Nelson in Colorado, they're loading up. The Dallas Stars have loaded up. Winnipeg got a little bit better on the back end. The Central Division is loaded. Boston, they moved on from so many different players, including Charlie Coyle. Brandon Carlo goes to Toronto. Brad Marchand, Trent Frederick. One more thing about Trent Frederick, by the way, because a lot of people were talking about Edmonton. How are they going to replace Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, who they lost in the offseason, with the offer sheets that Doug Armstrong and the Blues signed them to? Well, they just did. Jake Wallman, former Blue. Trent Frederick, former AAA St. Louis Blue. One played for the Big Blues. Well, the other one played AAA Blues. But still, that's how they replace Holloway and Broberg, which, hey, I've got no issue with that. Frederick is certainly capable. I don't know if he's as offensive as Holloway, but he's more than serviceable as an NHL player. And Wallman's a great skater. He's a skating defenseman. More experienced than Broberg. Broberg's still finding his way, playing incredible hockey, though, right now. I love watching this Philip Broberg play. How good is that kid going to be when he's 26, 27? Loving Broberg right now. Real quick, Taylor Hall, contract extension hasn't been completed yet with Carolina, but it will get done. So that's your news on Taylor Hall for those of you who are keeping track at home. All right, let's catch up with Jamal Mayers. We'll do that now, and lots more to come on this edition of Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Blue Note Roofing, David Novak, baby. I tell you about David Novak every single week here on Hockey Sense. He's the best roofer in the region. I say that, and I mean that. 314-920-5713. Call David Novak today. Let him take care of your roof, siding, gutters, soffit, fascia, whatever it is you're looking for. He can help you with it. He loves pucks, loves talking hockey with you. He'll talk hockey with you and fix your roof at the same time. That sounds too good to be true. And if you think it's too good to be true, well, it is. It's David Novak with Blue Note Roofing. Look for that yellow truck with the Blue Notes all over it. David Novak, Blue Note Roofing, proud sponsor of what we do here on Hockey Sense. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Tell your friends, and thanks for all the support you can continue to give us here on Hockey Sense as we broadcast live from the Half Coast Studios. Don't go anywhere. All right, back here on Hockey Sense. Great to have Jammer with us once again, driving to Chicago. I feel like we've done this show 2 or 3 times where you're driving to Chicago.
We have in the past. It's been a few years, but probably not the safest idea, but my eyes are on the road. I do have my seatbelt on. And I can still talk and think, so we're good.
Okay. A couple things I want to get out of the way first. We'll get into the Blues here in a couple seconds, but how about the Boston Bruins? I mean, they've moved on from so many players here, Jamal, from Trent Frederick to Brandon Carlo. Brad Marchand now goes to the Florida Panthers. It's always interesting when a hated rival all of a sudden joins your team. I'm curious your thoughts as to, you know, what that does to the Panthers dressing room, knowing that he's coming in. I'm sure they're pumped up about it. Charlie Coyle goes to the Colorado Avalanche, who made some big moves as well. So we'll get into the Avs. But I want to start with Marchand and the Boston Bruins, man. Your thought on what Don Sweeney did out of Boston and what that means for the Florida Panthers now as we enter the final stretch.
Well, so many layers to unpack here, Strick, for me. One of the things that's really interesting right off the surface is I found it kind of crazy that teams, division rivals, are trading with each other. Like that never used to happen, or very seldom. So that right off the bat was surprising. The next thing is, for me, is that you look at Florida, you look at Tampa Bay, you look at Toronto. One of those teams is for sure going to be out.
In the first round.
So it's become like a race. Like, we have to win the division. And that's what I think these decisions are made upon, is like the realization that not one of those 3 teams wants to finish in the 2 or 3 hole. And so they're putting a premium on, can we have a really strong finish, win the division, because we want to avoid one of these 2 teams. It also tells me that all 3 of these teams believe they can win the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really exciting. And I like when GMs push their chips into the pile, because when you have a team that's close, and what I mean by the close is, are you one of 6 or 8 teams that can win the Stanley Cup? As a player, it's what you want. You want your GM to push his chips in. I don't know if we're going to do it, but you know what? I love the fact he's not waiting 5 years. He's not waiting 4 years. They believe in this group now, and they're saying, here's the push. Let's see if you guys can take it to the next step and find a way to repeat, find a way to get to the top of the mountain one more time for Tampa, and find a way to, eliminate all the ghosts and terrible playoff runs that the Leafs have had over the years, because they too are running out of time.
Yeah, so Brandon Carlo, the defenseman, he also goes from Boston. He goes to Toronto. Trent Frederick goes to Edmonton. It's interesting because all I've heard all year long is, the Edmonton Oilers, they got to find a way to replace Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. Well, I guess they do that by bringing in Jake Wallman and Trent Frederick. Those are your replacements for Broberg and Holloway.
Yeah, they are. And I think that having seen Wallman play quite a bit this year, this is a guy who's a better defender than I anticipated, really good at distributing the puck, has offensive instincts, isn't going to be asked to do quite as much as he was asked to do for the Sharks, but it will be a nice complementary piece on a very good team.
Yeah,
you look at Trent. And Trent,
I've been a Wallman guy too over the years too, Jim. I obviously played here in St. Louis, but a great skater,
yes.
Great transporter of the puck.
Yes. I mean, he is a little bit odd in some respects. Some of his stuff that he does, it kind of turns some people off, but I like it. I enjoy his energy. I enjoy his attitude. He's a team guy. He plays hard, and he's had a breakout season this year. Didn't quite go the second half as well as the first part of the season for him offensively, but he's going to really help them. And then you look at Trent Frederick, he is the epitome of what a third line player should be and can contribute, 15 goals, can play a hard-nosed type of game. You're going to need those type of guys, assuming they're going to end up facing a team like perhaps in the playoffs. You don't know who they're going to face, but you're going to need, you can't have an abundance of players like Trent. And I think that I'm excited for him to be able to, now that he's kind of found his role and found his groove, he'll have a defined role. I think he's going to affect games when it matters most and score big goals when it matters most. And I think his best hockey's ahead of him.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Who knows? And I would agree with you that he would be a great third line player, but he may be elevated even in Edmonton. Who knows? He could be playing with Leon Draisaitl on the second line. You just never know how it's going to play out in terms of what their lines are going to look like. Yeah, they haven't got much out of Skinner, obviously. Arvidsson, obviously. They brought these veteran guys in. Who knows how their line combinations are going to shake up. And hopefully Trent can get healthy and get back in the lineup and get a handful of games in before the playoffs so he can get comfortable. That's what I hope for a guy like Frederick.
Yep.
The Rantanen situation, I mean, there's so many layers to go over there in terms of the situation with Carolina. I mean, you move Marty Necas, you get a player who you don't have under control beyond this season. He's a pending UFA. You don't get a contract extension done with him. You put yourself in a little bit of a jam. You want to avoid embarrassment at all costs and then also try to recover and try to get something that is equal to or greater than the player that you just moved on from in Marty Necas. And also Jack Drury, he's not a bad player either, and he's going to be around for several years to come. So they're able to get Logan Stankoven. They get a couple of first-round picks. I don't mind the return, Jamal, because they could always flip these first-round picks as well at some point in time as you get closer to the draft, and we'll see what they turn those first-rounders in. It hasn't been announced yet, so I don't know if there's a hiccup or what the issue is, but they still haven't officially announced that deal. But assuming everything goes through, how do you see Rantanen now being a member of the Dallas Stars?
Well, as we talked about a month ago, I think it's a miscalculation by the Carolina Hurricanes in not making sure that was a sign and trade deal from its inception. And I think it's a miscalculation on how players view your city. Listen, I am not sitting here saying that Raleigh isn't a great place to play and live. People have said there's so much around there that you don't really see when you visit there as a visitor. It's a great place to raise family. It's a great place to play. On the surface, however, when you're a visiting player, you're playing in a college rink. There's nothing around you. There's maybe 2 restaurants right near the hotel where you stay. You don't see anything. There's nothing around there. And so when you make a move like that and you give up a player who's got cost certainty in Necas, who at the beginning of the season was leading the league in scoring, and you give up on a player like Drury, who I think is going to really help the Abs, and I did the game there last night. He is a really good centerman that plays on the right side of the puck, can kill penalties, a really valuable player for this group. And you don't have certainty and have him sign it. It's a massive, massive mistake. Massive mistake. And so Rantanen moves on. He goes to Dallas, where he said in today's interviews, I wanted to go to a bigger city. I wanted to be in a city. I like Dallas. It's got more to offer, more to do. That would seem like pretty simple. I have a conversation with a guy's agent to find out. If that's the case, then I wouldn't be trading for him to Raleigh.
I know. Although he didn't want to sign an extension with the LA Kings. There was some talk with LA, but he didn't want to sign there. I do think the tax-free state implications, I mean, it's so attractive to players. That's why he probably signed for a little bit less. I know he was
but listen, Andy, you're only talking about $500,000 a year, right? That's what you're really doing on that type of salary, $12 million salary. You're adding $500,000, which isn't nothing, but it's, that's really not going to shift the more about a fit on where he wanted to go. And if you looked at the teams before Draisaitl had signed, I thought Dallas would be a fantastic fit for him. You got guys that are going to be on expiring contracts with Jamie Benn and a couple other players that are a little bit older. Pavelski was there as well. So you saw there might be an opportunity, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And Jim Nill scooped in and figured out a way to get him signed and get him on the roster.
Okay, so and Dallas was a team that he had interest in all along. I mean, they're mapping out their future destinations well beyond even when the trade was made to Carolina. I think Dallas was always a place that he looked at as a potential fit, which is why I think his agent steered Carolina into talks with the Dallas Stars to try to get a deal done so he could get an extension completed. I kind of want to go a little hockey nerd on you, though. I was talking to a player today, and as much as Carolina may not be the best or the first most preferable destination for a guy like Rantanen, it just didn't look like it was a good fit for him from a hockey standpoint either. Carolina plays a man-to-man system, which is not always the preferred style of play for an offensive guy. You're always in the battle the way it was described to me. You don't get as much time and space. You don't get to freewheel it a little bit as much as you would like. Certainly not in close to in comparison to what he was or how they were playing in Carolina before he became a member of the Hurricanes. Jake Gensel had similar issues with playing in Carolina last season. So how do you look at playing a man-to-man style versus a zone, which 5 on a die is how it's always been described to me when you talk to coaches around the league? Is that hard for a superstar to play in?
No, yeah, I see your point, but it doesn't matter. Most teams are playing a man and a half right now. Some teams are playing more, like you're saying, like a zone, or they do a swarm system. I think it's less to do with that and more about how they create offense. I think philosophically, what Brendan Moore wants is volume. It's all about funneling to the net, funnel. And when you're a guy like Rantanen, who's not a burner, he's more of a cerebral, hold on to it, use the width of the ice, low to high, spread them out, finding seams. Like, that's his game. Like that's not the game that he played. He played and had so much success in Colorado. And you're watching Matrix adapt to that system, to the way that they play in Colorado offensively, because their D are so active. They're encouraged to jump up. So for me, Andy, I think it has more to do with how they choose to generate offense. And I think that it's less of a fit for Rantanen in Carolina in that regard than what he'll be able to do in Dallas. It'll be more similar to what he's able to do in Colorado with similar type of players around him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Rupe Hansen, these guys, I just look at him as having great chemistry with those type of players.
Oh,
Ken Hitchcock played a similar style when he was here. I mean, just everything was about funnel, chip, funnel. And Brett Hall called it the triple chip. Yeah, chip it across the blue line, the red line, and the blue line. It's just the triple chip offense. So but I mean, it was all about funneling pucks to the net and volume of shots. So every team plays their own style. I get it, and not everybody's a perfect fit in every different spot. Listen, there's the Blues elected to kind of stand pat, and I don't really have a huge issue with it. I mean, listen, you're 2 points out. They didn't make the playoffs the last couple of years. You don't want to make it 3 years in a row, Jammer. I'm just curious how you look at their situation. Obviously, losing Colton Parayko doesn't help, and it probably, altered your mindset a little bit in terms of how you were looking at certain players. Because at the end of the day, you got to have guys that can replace them, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think that there's a couple things at play here for me. I think that the fact that they're only a point out put a tremendous amount of pressure, both externally and internally, to keep it together and push for the playoffs. Now, you have two different dynamics at work here that aren't similar, right? You have a set of defensemen that you likely would like to move on from that have, term left on their contracts in Leddy and Falk. And then up front, there's been a tremendous amount of talk about what they're going to do with their captain, Shen, who also has term remaining. So when you have assets with term, you are less likely to be pressured just to take a pick to let them go. You have their value of what you've determined that they're worth. And if teams weren't willing to meet that, then you keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Because why do you keep them? You keep them because you're a point out of the playoffs. If they had blown their socks off for Braden Shen, then he probably is no longer a St. Louis Blue. But because they didn't, you keep them, and you see if this team can find a way to get into the playoffs. And so I think that you also have to layer in the fact that your best defenseman is also out for a considerable amount of time, it appears. And so that put a little bit more emphasis on them figuring out, okay, are we going to be able to get this done, get this push into the playoffs without Colton Parayko? And that also means that I'm not going to be able to trade Falk, and I'm not going to be able to trade Leddy, because I'm going to need them now even more because I've got our best defenseman out. So I think what I'm trying to say is that if Parayko had been, not gotten hurt, I could see them finding a way to move out one of those other 2D, seeing as they just rewarded Tucker with a 2-year deal as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, actually. I mean, just everything. That's why it's always a day-by-day situation. I mean, injuries kind of pop up out of nowhere. I mean, Colton Parayko got hurt in the last seconds of overtime. It was just a freak incident where he just basically got his own legs tangled, underneath him, and he just twisted his knee. And it's too bad that he's going to be out, because he's been pretty indestructible when you look at him throughout his career. He never gets hurt, talking about Colton Parayko. I want to give a shout out to Luke Cunnin. He goes from San Jose to Columbus. So that's a good pickup by Columbus, and I hope Cunnin plays well there and puts himself in a good spot as he heads into the summer. Last deal for you, though, Jamal. With Brock Nelson going to Colorado, I mean, Colorado made a number of moves.
Oof.
I mean, that's a great kind of pickup where I don't want to say it's under the radar, but it's not getting as much attention right now because it happened late last night. And, the Rantanen deal happened today. Brad Marchand happened today. It's getting a lot of the headlines. But Brock Nelson, you get a guy who's been a perennial 30 goal scorer the last handful of years walking in with that group. How do you see him fitting in there?
Oh, well, you build your teams up the middle, and I tell you, they got off Middlestad, which was a smart move. They bring in Charlie Coyle, who fill that 3-hole, and you got Brock Nelson, who will fit in nicely right behind Nathan McKinnon. So you build your teams from up the middle, and you look at what their D are and what they can do. And getting back Manson last night as well, they're a team that is again pushing their chips in and believes they have a chance to win the cup. And I look at that roster and I don't see many holes. I think they're going to be a tough out. They've got the goaltender they've wanted. They're really, really tough to play against, and I think that he's going to really solidify. And how are you going to avoid now? If you try to get yourself away from McKinnon, you've got Brock Nelson there. It's just not going to be easy, and that's a different animal than having nothing against him than having Middlestad in that position. So. Unbelievable job by the Avs to upgrade, and I think really, to me, it's the Avs in the West. It's the Avs, and it's the Vegas Golden Knights. I think those are the two teams that are scaring teams right now, and that even puts them ahead of the Edmonton Oilers. Probably because of the way they've been playing the last month.
Yeah, so Vegas gets Riley Smith back. He was with the Rangers. He was originally with Pittsburgh after he left Vegas, and then was with the Rangers. They get him back. What about Winnipeg, though? I mean, they get Luke Shen. They didn't make a whole lot of moves, but you watch them play every night. It doesn't look like they really need to. They don't have that many holes. I mean, you just mentioned Colorado and Vegas. Do you have Winnipeg in there, too? Dallas now? I mean, look at their top six.
Yeah, but I think it's those two are the cream of the crop. And then you're right, Winnipeg's up there too. You can't forget about them. Arguably the best third line in hockey. And I think they picked up where'd they pick up from Seattle?
Brandon Tanev. Yeah, they got him too.
Tanev. They got Tanev, I think, adds to their group and brought some muscle in with Luke Shen. And so I liked what they did, because what they did was a little different. What they did was, we like our group, we like our core. We're gonna help beef up our bottom six and our depth defensively. And that is another way to give your team confidence that you're ready for the playoffs and ready to go. Sometimes it means doing less and letting them know, hey, this is all we need to have. We like our group the way it is.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be a great finish. Will the Blues get in, Jamal?
I think they do.
Ooh.
I think help if they're struggling. It does scare me that you don't have Colton Parayko, but I think they find a way to get in.
That trade for Cam Fowler looks great now, even though he doesn't play on the right side. I mean, he may have to now. I mean, we'll see how they use their righties and lefties. But that's good insurance too, especially with the way he's playing. Although Parayko was playing on top of his game, so we'll see how it plays out. Blues are in Anaheim. They've got the back-to-back games, Anaheim and LA over the weekend. So Jammer, thanks for doing this as always. We appreciate it. Obviously, Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You're probably wheeling down all the way to Chicago right now on some tires that you got from Dobbs.
You better believe I am. And the best thing about them is that they're not just a tire company. It's all about great service and great people. Family owned, been in the business for over 42 years, locations all over town, and they'll take care of you. And they can get your car in, out, fixed it out, like unbelievable. The same day, every time. And so it doesn't matter when you call them in the morning and say, hey, listen, I'm heading up to Chicago. I need an oil change. Bring it in. They'll take care of you. And want your car, they can fix it, and start from home.
Yeah, hey, you're cutting out a little bit, so I'll tell you about Bartolino's, though. The 5 of the restaurants, Bartolino's South, Bartolino's Osteria. Chris is Pancake and Dining. Chris is at the Docket, and then Bartolino's Twin Oaks, man. They forge lasting relationships, Jamal. It's all about relationships. You know that. Family motto. Cook good food, serve plenty, baby. Bartolino's. You got to love that.
Yes, great spot. Thanks for doing that.
Well, Ricky, listen, technology is
Thanks
what
for
it
having
is.
me, buddy.
All right, buddy.
Freezing.
We'll be in touch, okay? Take care.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Later.
See you, pal. That's Jamal Mayers. Always great to catch up with him. His interview brought to you by Blue Note Roofing. David Novak, man. Every time I see that wind or the rain or hail is in the forecast, I think about David Novak, 314-920-5713. 314-920-5713. Call David Novak today and let him take great care of you. Gutters, siding, soffit, fascia, roofing. Nobody does it better. He's the best in the business. Look for that yellow truck with the blue notes all over it. I mean, nobody does it better than David Novak. He's a huge hockey fan, huge supporter of hockey here in St. Louis. Huge Blues fan. He'll talk hockey with you and fix your roof at the same time. It's a dream come true. So again, give David a call today, 314-920-5713 for David Novak with Blue Note Roofing. Let's step aside. We'll come back and wrap things up on this edition of Hockey Sense. Don't go anywhere. All right. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jamal Mayers. And obviously, all the trade deadline talk. It's fascinating, man. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out down the stretch. The Blues have 19 games left on the schedule to make up 2 points. I think they can do it. We'll see what Vancouver has to say about that. We'll see what Calgary has to say about that. We'll see what Utah has to say about it. Utah did a lot of house cleaning, man. They re-signed all their guys, it seems like. That's kind of the Bill Armstrong way. He learned that from Doug Armstrong. Listen, you don't need to panic and just make moves just to make moves. Everybody's in a little bit of a different situation. Every GM, every team. And when I say different situation, usually it's broken down into, is the window open or is it closed? And if it's open, how far open is it? So for Carolina, they don't care about their first-round picks. Tampa doesn't care about their first-round picks. Florida doesn't care about their first-round picks. Not right now, because the window's open to win now. So they'll flip first-round picks. Carolina just got a couple more, and we'll see what they choose to do with those moving forward down the stretch. So again, some big-time moves. It was a great trade deadline day. I mean, trade deadline 2025 will go down as one of the best we've had in quite a while. There's still trades coming in as we speak, and even the official details of the Carolina-Dallas trade. I mean, nothing has been made official as we sit right now. Dallas and Carolina, they haven't even announced the deal. Neither team has. Eric Johnson, by the way, goes back to Colorado. You had to figure that he's loving that. You could just tell he just missed not being there. He's in the last leg of his career, though. Wish him the best of luck, and hopefully they can win another one. As long as the Blues don't have anything to say about that. We'll see, man. All these teams now, especially when you look at the Eastern Conference, winning the division is obviously huge. It's important. You don't want to see yourself get bounced in the first round. Four Hands Brewing Company, get that Cam and Strick Mango Seltzer. Check out all the locations, including the newest one at Lambert Airport. I mean, it just looks unbelievable what Kevin Lemp has done. Kevin Lemp is flat out getting it done. All our friends over there, Four Hands Brewing Company. Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Blue Note Roofing. Again, David Novak, 314-920-5713. Call him today. And, of course, Lordo's Diamonds. Get that special someone, something special in your life at Lordo's Diamonds. Are you looking to pop the question? Great selection of engagement rings. I mean, anybody who's getting engaged listen, that's where I tell them to go to Lordo's Diamonds, right there in the heart of Ladue, 314-432-8008. Lordo's Diamonds. And, of course, the one and only First Community. First Community. Looking for that home loan. Are you in the market for a new home? This is the time of year people start really ramping that up. If you're even thinking about it, I got big news for you from First Community. You already know they're one of the largest home lenders in the area. Always have had a wide range of home loan products, from first-time buyer loans to jumbo loans, but now there's something new for every borrower. It's the Smart Choice Home Loan. This new mortgage product has a rate of just 6.75% for all qualified borrowers. 30-year fixed rate term, and you heard that right, it's a fixed rate, 6.75 fixed rate for 30 years. So you don't have to think about your rate adjusting in a few years. All you need is 10% down. So you come up with your 10% down payment, and no private mortgage insurance, no PMI. That's a huge deal. Lots more. No fees for the application, processing, no fees for the underwriting either. You'd be surprised, these little fees that they throw in there for the processing, for the underwriting, you don't have any of that. Fixed rates, finding them this low, it's hard to find. You're just not going to. And this loan is now available to qualified borrowers, excluding existing First Community mortgages. So make the smart choice and apply online at firstcommunity.com. Do that today. All right, for Aiden, everybody affiliated with this edition of Hockey Sense, I hope you enjoyed Trade Deadline. Please subscribe. And I'd love to hear your comments as well. If you're listening to the show, shoot me a comment right here on YouTube. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. I prefer what you do like, and certainly know that I appreciate all the support that you're giving us here live from First Community as we continue with Hockey Sense on all the podcast platforms. I'm Andy Strickland, reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. For Aiden and everybody here at Half Coast Studios, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll do it again next week.